stand by. The second Safe Spaces Summit will begin shortly. The second Safe Spaces Summit is brought to you by Global Peace Foundation and Consuelo Zobel Alger Foundation, and supported by the Department of Education, Department of Education International Cooperation Office, Unilever, and ABSCBN News Channel, our official media partner. Please stand by. The second Safe Spaces Summit will begin shortly. The second Safe Spaces Summit is brought to you by Global Peace Foundation and Consuelo Zobel Alger Foundation, and supported by the Department of Education, Department of Education International Cooperation Office, Unilever, and ABSCBN News Channel, our official media partner.
such a unifying vision. We need to recognize the vital importance of the self-evident, transcendent truths that define our common humanity. And we need to build consensus around shared values to undergird the creation of vibrant, prosperous, ethical societies. It is precisely for this reason that I founded the Global Peace Foundation. It is from this broad-based platform that we need to work to concretely demonstrate the effectiveness of this value-based approach in addressing critical issues of peace and opportunity in communities and nations around the world. That vision statement is simple and clear. That all people, regardless of nationality, race, ethnicity, or religion, belong to one family under God.
All children and youth have the right to grow up to be productive, self-reliant, and empowered individuals. We at Consuelo Zobel Alger Foundation seek to support them during this developmental stage. As a private US-based foundation that works for children and their families in the Philippines and Hawaii, we aim to empower the youth through our Life Skills Plus program. The generosity and genuine love for young people by our founder and benefactress, the late Doña Consuelo Zobel Alger, have paved the way for us to commit to building the dignity and resilience of vulnerable youth by equipping them with skills to succeed, especially those who are at risk of or have experienced abuse, neglect, and exploitation. To do this, our Life Skills Plus program focuses on education, healthy lifestyles, employability, family life, and civic engagement of the youth. Education and skills training on technical vocation, creative arts, and leadership are coupled with training on life skills such as youth upkeep and self-care, interaction and communication, productivity, relationships, reproductive health, personal safety, employability, and community involvement. The program also provides child health interventions, adolescent reproductive health education, and livelihood support. We implement this together with our other programs and interventions to make sure that our youth have the necessary abilities to reach their full potential. Because an empowered youth fosters an empowered generation who can lead, dream, and aspire, and make a difference in our world.
Some might be overwhelmed by the complexity of a disruptive world. We see this as an exciting time for bold and forward-thinking leaders.
With several leaders of economies today reminded APEC leaders to focus on economic synergy and cooperation on this year's APEC.
Welcome to Boracay, the Philippines' most famous beach.
We have covered the journey of our young democracy. In ANC, we were witnesses to the defining moments of Philippine history that influenced the world.
To the service of the nation.
We chronicle the journey of a dynamic young population as it makes its mark in a robust economy.
We talk to leaders. We don't shy away from difficult conversations.
ANC Leadership Series.
We don't just tell stories. We tell you why they matter. We sift through the noise and arm you with facts.
We report about disruption and how the latest technology and innovation have changed the way we live.
We told stories about crisis, but also about opportunities that came with them.
This is the Philippines.
The success story we want to share with the world. And we are ANC.
Let us all welcome our host, Mika Pineda.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to the second Safe Spaces Summit in the Philippines. From Safe Spaces to Brave Spaces, happening live via Zoom and on 24. Thank you for joining us. We are also joined by our viewers via Facebook pages and via the Facebook page of Global Peace Foundation, Safe Spaces Campaign, and the Department of Education. Hello. Thank you for joining us. My name is Mika Pineda, and I will be your host for today and tomorrow. It is good to be back and be part of the second Safe Spaces Summit here in the Philippines. And today is a wonderful day because we have a total of 3,860 registered participants from different parts of the country, from Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. And of course, we have our participants from a total of 26 countries. Wow, we are just growing here at Safe Spaces, and I believe that deserves a round of applause. And how wonderful it is that you are part of this. So following the first Safe Spaces Summit in the Philippines, which highlights the role of the youth in creating safe spaces that do not incite judgment based on identity or experience, we have the second Safe Spaces Summit in the Philippines, which will emphasize the importance of young people encouraging discourse in an unbiased, non-aggressive, and respectful environment where everyone, yes, everyone can express themselves and help one another grow to your full potential while cultivating a culture of course, active participation. Safe Spaces Summit is brought to you by the Global Peace Foundation and the Consuelo Zobel Alger Foundation, and supported by the Department of Education as well as the Department of Education International Cooperation Office, together with Unilever and ABSCBN News Channel as our official media partner. We would also like to acknowledge our child protection team who is present here today at this event. It is established for children and youth to reach out if ever, you feel like your rights have been violated, or if you feel unsafe because of things that have been talked about or happened during the event. You can contact the Child Protection Team through Global Peace Foundation Philippines Facebook page, and you can drop your concerns there. The Safe Spaces campaign supports the United Nations 2030 Youth Strategy to ensure the engagement and participation of young people in the implementation of the 2030 Agenda. And do you know that one of the targets in the UN Youth Strategy is actually promoting safe spaces? So, what does that mean? What is in store for the next 2 days? Well, we will continue having conversations about local, global, and social issues, especially those that matter to you the most. We will all continue with learning. Yes, learning. So you have to listen. We are excited as much as you to hear from industry experts, leaders, personalities who will share their wisdom and valuable insights about topics for this year's summit. So, like I said, listen very well, learn and engage. That is the key. Listen, learn, and engage to make the most out of these 2 days. So to get us started, To give us his welcome remarks, let's all welcome the chairman of the Global Peace Foundation Philippines, Mr. Jinsu Kim.
Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of Global Peace Foundation Philippines, I'd like to welcome everyone to Safe Space Summit 2022. Last year, our first Safe Space Summit reached more than 150,000 people on Twitter and more than 10,000 people in other social media platforms. We also followed it up with a series of youth-led Safe Talks, volunteers camp, and chosen 5 new Safe Space heroes during the Global Youth Summit. You also followed us along to our journey till we reached this second summit today. This is the second time our organization and Consuelo Zobel Alger Foundation organize an event for student leaders, young professionals, civil society, educational institutions, and government officials who are passionate about building safe spaces for everybody to engage, express, and empower. The theme for this year's summit is From Safe Space to Brave Spaces. Last year, we created an impact toward creating safe spaces, and now we are more ready to encourage discourse, recognize diversity, and share experiences to create larger safe spaces for everyone. We are encouraging discourses in an unbiased, non-aggressive, and respectful environment where everyone can express themselves and help one another grow to their full potential while cultivating a culture of active participation. We have invited speakers from different fields to talk about various topics concerning safe space to brave spaces. Moreover, we launched a short film competition open for all the youth in the Philippines who wanted to share their talents and advocacies toward creating a safe space for everyone through the 5 categories: safe communities, safe schools, safe conversations, creating safe spaces for children, and safe spaces for all faces. The winners for the competition will receive 50,000 pesos each. They will be announced on the second day of our summit tomorrow, so make sure to support your teams and favorite films. But now, I would like to congratulate everyone who submitted their short films. I'm really proud of your initiative and courage to share your passion in filmmaking and safe spaces. We are all one family under God, despite the differences in race, nationality, gender, social status, etc. Whether we like it or not, everything here on our planet is interconnected. What we do will definitely affect other people or the environment. So it is important that we as individuals have the capacity to be self-aware and selfless to create a better world for everyone. During this summit, we will also launch the online learning platform for safe spaces. We hope to reach more young people like you to engage in the discourse for safe spaces and take a leap toward creating brave spaces where all people are comfortable, respected, and well loved. I truly hope that your passion for safe space will grow bigger and stronger after you have attended this year's summit, and I hope to see you in the front line in the near future, waving the banners of safe spaces for everyone. Thank you very much, and mabuhay kayong lahat.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jin-Soo Kim. We are very fortunate that the Global Peace Foundation and the Consuelo Zobel Alger Foundation has forged a partnership in highlighting the role of young people in advancing safe spaces in schools, communities, and conversations both online and offline. And to give us a special message on behalf of the Consuelo Zobel Alger Foundation, let us welcome the President and CEO of Consuelo Foundation, Mr. Greg Aubrey.
Mabuhay. On behalf of the Consuelo Zobel Alger Foundation, I'd like to warmly welcome all of you to the 2022 Safe Spaces Summit. I'd like to thank our friends at Unilever for their partnership, and I'd also like to thank and congratulate the Global Peace Foundation for their hard work in making this summit a reality. I'd also like to offer them congratulations as they launch their Safe Spaces program during this event. I'd also like to warmly welcome and thank all of you for your participation in this event. That's the speakers, but especially the youth, because it's all of you who are key to advancing and starting the environment and the movement where we can have safe spaces in schools, safe spaces in community, and safe spaces in our conversations, both online and offline. And because of this partnership among us that this summit provides, we can look to better engage others in how to create safe spaces for all people. Our foundress at the foundation when our work, Doña Consuelo Zobel Alger, asked us to focus on preventing and treating neglect and abuse of children. And she also asked that our approach be rooted in hope and inspiring hope for those who have lost it or for those who've never experienced it. And I think it's this great notion of hope that makes us so proud to be part of this 2022 Safe Space Summit, because in here lies hope for the future. I think it's timely as we take these initial steps of changing from our pandemic mindsets to our post-pandemic mindsets, that we begin to be in a room with vibrant and creative minds to reimagine and think about the future and how it can be more safe. I know there's still a lot of people in pain from the pandemic, but there's also opportunity, and I hope at this summit we can think and harness some of the opportunity that this terrible situation over the last years has presented. Because at its core, I think it's the provision of safety or safe spaces that provides us the ability to see the future. And by seeing the future, we can take these courageous steps to create what we're calling these brave spaces. It's my sincere hope that this summit will spawn ideas and connections and encourage others to actively engage on matters most important to them. I'm also excited to see what happens after this summit, as we generate more public interest in safe spaces and this campaign continues to grow, how the conversation changes and evolves, and how the mechanisms such as the Safe Spaces online program that emerges and others really take root and really expand this program. So I'm staying tuned, and I hope you do too. Again, I offer you a warm welcome and thank you for your time at the summit.
Thank you, Mr. Greg Aubrey and Mr. Jin-Soo Kim, for sharing your welcome message to all of us and for giving us, of course, a platform like this to celebrate the role and potential of young people in advancing safe spaces. But before we get started with day one of our second Safe Spaces Summit, we'd like to thank the organizations, of course, who worked hard to make today happen. Safe Spaces Summit is brought to you by the Global Peace Foundation and the Consuelo Zobel Alger Foundation, and is supported by the Department of Education and Department of Education International Cooperation Office, together with Unilever and ABSCBN News Channel, who is our official media partner. This year, we have good news because this year we have a new virtual platform and it is called On24. And On24 is giving us a new experience to learn from an immersive virtual environment. So you do check out the virtual exhibition of our partners and watch the finalists of the Safe Spaces campaign short film competition via On24. So that's ON and then number 2 and 4. You may check out www.globalpeace.info/safe-spaces-summit-2022. Let me say that again, and you can write it down. www.globalpeace.info/safe-spaces-summit-2022 so that you can watch the short film entries via the On24 platform. So shout out to those who are with us via On24. Hello, hello. Now, I'm sure you're all excited to get started, but before we jump right into it, for your questions to our distinguished speakers, you may use the Zoom and On24 question and answer box, or if you're tuning via Facebook, you may write your questions in the comments section. So we will get to your questions later on. But we also have exciting prizes in store for you. Just like last year, we will be giving away a total of 10,000 pesos via GCash and other exciting giveaways. You can use that to load your data for your online classes or for your work from home setup. So all you have to do is you have to listen well, listen to each speaker well, and tweet us your key takeaway. Your key takeaway from their talks or your favorite quote or what really resonated with you. Really, what is your takeaway from those talks? Tweet it, and each chosen tweet, the one that wins, will receive 1,000 pesos GCash. So share the takeaways that gave you the most impact. Share as much as you want for more chances of winning, and you just might win prizes. So what is the Twitter takeaway criteria? Substance is 40%. Relevance of the topic is 35%. Audience appeal, let's say that's about number of likes and retweets, that's 25%. So that's a total of 100%. Substance is 40, relevance is 35, and audience appeal is 25, and that is a total of 100%. So pay close attention and start tweeting when you start listening to these talks. But remember, use the hashtag Safe Spaces for All Faces. Once again, that is hashtag Safe Spaces for All Faces, so that you can be sure that we see those tweets. Once again, use the hashtag Safe Spaces for All Faces and start tweeting away. So we've been through a lot these past 2 years that we're in the pandemic, right? Problems may have surfaced that we didn't notice before. So, things that we haven't talked about. So actually, for today's topics, we picked topics for our event today that highlights and brings conversations to subjects that we haven't quite paid attention to, or maybe not really talked about because of everything that's been happening, or maybe sometimes we just avoid these topics. So this is what we are going to be discussing today. And our topics include safe spaces for all faces, safe schools, safe conversations, safe spaces for children, and safe communities, all of which are very, very important and relevant to all of us today. For our first day of the Safe Spaces Summit, we will have experts that will discuss these topics. And tomorrow, for our second day, we will showcase youth initiatives addressing the following topics that we have, and also a film showing for our Safe Spaces short film competition. And the winner will win a total of 250,000 pesos in cash. So, really, really exciting. Let's jump right into it. Let's get started. first topic, the free movement of people, what it is and why it matters. Freedom of movement, social opportunities, social support is probably the most relevant to us at this moment. Since we've been in a pandemic for more than a year now more than ever, we all realize how important opportunities are for people to help their families and really just get through difficult situations. And our first speakers are Christine Salinas and Elson Monato from UNHCR Manila. Christine is a protection associate at UNHCR Manila, where she primarily handles issues relating to the protection and concerns of refugees and asylum seekers in the Philippines. Since joining UNHCR in 2017, Christine has worked with government and non-government partners, including persons of concern, in addressing individual cases and discussing policy advocacies, especially on documentation, coordination, health, and welfare issues. Christine also serves as the office's focal for various initiatives, including the pilot Complementary Pathways Program of the Philippines. Joining Christine is Mr. Elson Monato, and Elson currently serves as the Field Protection Associate of the UNHCR, or United Nations Higher Commissioner for Refugees, based in Cotabato City since 2013. Elton has over 20 years of experience as a humanitarian worker with focus on the protection of the internally displaced persons, human rights, child protection, and child rights in Moro and indigenous people communities in Mindanao. He was deployed to various disaster and humanitarian crises and facilitates access of displaced population to immediate life-saving interventions and protection services. Safe Spaces advocates, let's all welcome our first speakers from UNHCR, Christine and Elson.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. At the onset, while I'm sharing my screen, we'd like to thank the Global Peace Foundation Philippines for giving us an opportunity to shed light on the issues faced by those among the most vulnerable in our society: refugees, asylum seekers, stateless persons, and internally displaced persons, collectively known as persons of concern. On behalf of UNHCR, Elson and I will be discussing the concept of safe spaces while remembering that these persons of concern also need a safe space just like anyone else. Today, please allow us to discuss how we can all make safe and brave spaces for them, in turn creating brave spaces for everyone in society. So UNHCR was created in 1950 during the aftermath of the Second World War to help Europeans who fled or lost their homes. The High Commissioner is primarily mandated to provide international protection and humanitarian assistance and to seek permanent solutions for persons within the office's core mandate responsibilities. The effective exercise of this mandate both presupposes and is underpinned by the commitment from states to cooperate with him or her and this office. Thus, it is important to emphasize that the state has the primary responsibility over these persons of concern who are in its territory. Given that the Philippines has a functioning and a well-established status determination procedure and protection mechanisms, UNHCR here in the Philippines plays a supervisory role and supports the state through the provision of technical assistance in the implementation of its commitments under the Refugee and Statelessness Conventions. The Philippines has a well-established mechanism for the protection of persons of concern. In fact, while the Department of Justice Refugees and Stateless Persons Protection Unit, or DOJ-RSPPU, has sole authority over the assessment of asylum and stateless applications in the country, Comprehensive rights and services are accessible to refugees and other persons of concern with the support of government and non-government partners. Government partners are primarily engaged through an interagency referral system to be able to have access to holistic protection services while in the country. The government has an effective and functioning referral platform to address protection concerns of POC, allowing access to various rights and services, including durable solutions. Noting that the government is not able to provide everything to persons of concern, additional support is also being requested through non-government partners, including faith-based organizations, civil society, non-government organizations, the private sector, even international organizations such as UNHCR. When we talk about persons of concern in the Philippines, we are talking about a mixed group of individuals with unique protection needs. The High Commissioner's core mandate covers refugees, that is, all persons outside their country of origin for reasons of feared persecution, conflict, general violence, or other circumstances that have seriously disturbed public order and who, as a result, require international protection. Given the particular character of refugees as people who lack the protection of their own countries, the High Commissioner was established as the legal entity to be able to intercede on their behalf, as best illustrated by his supervisory responsibilities in respect of international refugee instruments. The High Commissioner has a mandate with respect to refugees globally, regardless of the location of the refugees. Asylum seekers refer to individuals whose refugee status has not yet been determined by the authorities, but whose claim to international protection entitles him or her to a certain protective status on the basis that he or she could be a refugee. In short, an individual who has a pending asylum application is referred to as an asylum seeker. Refugees were once asylum seekers, but not all asylum seekers will become refugees. The High Commissioner for Refugees has stipulated responsibilities for refugees who are stateless. In 1995, the conclusion on the prevention and reduction of statelessness and the protection of stateless persons consolidated the evolution of the High Commissioner's mandate with regard to non-refugee stateless persons, who are outside. Sorry about that. Sorry about this technical issue. So, mandate with regard to non-refugee stateless persons and the prevention and reduction of statelessness more broadly. The conclusion requested the Office of the High Commissioner, inter alia, actively to promote accession to the international statelessness instruments and to provide technical and advisory services pertaining to the preparation and implementation of nationality legislation. Subsequent EXCOM conclusions and GA resolutions have further developed and refined the High Commissioner's mandate and have referred to 4 distinct areas in which the office is authorized to act: identification, prevention, and reduction of statelessness, and the protection of stateless persons. The High Commissioner does not have a general or exclusive mandate for internally displaced people, but has been authorized by the General Assembly to be involved operationally under circumstances in enhancing protection and providing humanitarian assistance to internally displaced persons through special operations. The requirements for the High Commissioner's activities in favor of IDPs are specific request or authorization from the Secretary General or a competent principal organ of the UN, the consent of the state or other entities concerned, assurance of access to the internally displaced, availability of adequate resources and the office's particular expertise and experience, complementarity with other agencies, and adequate staff safety. It was agreed in mid-2004 5, that the Office of the High Commissioner would assume global cluster leadership for protection and co-leadership in the area of camp coordination or management and emergency shelter. So who are migrants? Are they persons of concern to UNHCR? At present, there is no universally accepted definition for the term migrant. The common understanding, however, is that a migrant is a person who moves by choice rather than to escape conflict or persecution, usually across an international border, for instance, to join family members already abroad, to search for a livelihood, or for a range of other purposes. However, we must be careful in lumping refugees, asylum seekers, stateless persons, and internally displaced persons as mere migrants, as there are important distinctions in the circumstances of migrants versus that of persons of concern. It must be highlighted that unlike migrants, which have a choice on whether to stay or leave, refugees, asylum seekers, stateless persons, and IDPs are forced into their situation and are not given a choice on their status. In addition, refugees, asylum seekers, and stateless persons do not have the protection extended by the state through its embassies and consulates. Distinguishing the case of refugees, asylum seekers, stateless persons, and IDPs from migrants ensures that managing their cases would be viewed from a protection but not merely an immigration lens. So returnees, meanwhile, are former refugees who are able to return to their country of origin. So you might think that the protection of refugees and other persons of concern is a very complicated matter. While it is, we can simplify it in a way by keeping these four principles in mind. The right to seek asylum is a human right, meaning all individuals should be able to have access to asylum if needed. However, this is not to mean that seeking asylum is equivalent to being recognized as a refugee. Aside from meeting the definition of who a refugee is, an individual seeking asylum must also be deserving of international protection. Article 33 of the Refugee Convention provides that no contracting state shall expel or return in any manner whatsoever to the frontiers of territories where his life or freedom would be threatened on account of his race, religion, nationality, membership of a particular social group, or political opinion. This is also known as the principle of non-refoulement, which is the cornerstone of refugee protection. Refoulement does not necessarily happen only in countries of origin. Refoulement can also refer to any place in which an individual's life, liberty, or freedom is threatened. So, countries refusing access to the asylum procedure is also called refoulement. The third key principle on the protection of refugees is non-detention on the basis of seeking asylum. This emphasizes that seeking asylum is not a criminal act and no individual should be penalized for doing so. Refugees can only be detained if they commit any violation under the laws of the country where they are currently staying, which any other individual has the obligation to follow. Given the sensitivities on the circumstances of these persons of concern, confidentiality is strictly observed and personal information of POC are only shared on a need-to-know basis. Their consent should also be sought in onward sharing of personal data. The special circumstances of refugees and asylum seekers are also considered. That is why even their embassies or government agencies are prohibited from being contacted, given that the state may be agents of persecution as well. The bottom line is that we do not want persons of concern to be in harm's way, so we have to ensure that their security will not be compromised when we address their concerns. The Philippines is a state party to core documents on international refugee law and statelessness. These formalize the commitments of the country to extend protection to these persons of concern in need of protection not just in terms of processing their applications, but even in their access to rights and services. The conventions provide the minimum standards for states to observe towards these POC, but nothing prevents states from making its services more comprehensive for them. The convention also provides that POC have the obligation to comply with the domestic policies of their host countries to contribute to public safety and order. There are various initiatives that are ongoing worldwide to address the protection concerns of POCs in the Philippines. So the Global Refugee Forum in the high-level segment on statelessness is an international platform for various stakeholders to commit to adopt measures that enhance the protection of refugees, asylum seekers, stateless persons, stateless applicants, and persons at risk of statelessness worldwide and encourages responsibility sharing. Meanwhile, the Global Action Plan to End Statelessness and the I Belong campaign are campaigns to end statelessness and while engaging various stakeholders. The Philippines has its own national action plan to end statelessness to strengthen its mechanisms against statelessness. Most recently, the Philippines also acceded to the 1961 Convention on the Reduction of Statelessness. The Cities with Refugees Initiative is an initiative in line with the GCR, the Global Compact on Refugees, and the Global Refugee Forum as a way of recognizing the huge role that communities play in welcoming refugees. Cities with Refugees promotes inclusion and seamless integration into communities, supports refugees, and brings communities together through good practices and solidarity with refugees. At present, there are 13 signatory cities in the Philippines who have committed to participate in this campaign. Meanwhile, the complementary pathways are safe and regulated avenues for the admission of refugees in countries where their protection needs will be met as a way for them to access durable solutions. These are initiatives that we work on together with the government of the Philippines and other partners, and our commitment as UNHCR in the Philippines is to continue supporting the country in its pursuit of a truly inclusive mechanism that allows refugees and other persons of concern thrive amid their circumstances. I'll now turn the floor over to my colleague Elson for the next part of the presentation.
Good afternoon, everyone. And again, this is Elson. And I want to thank the organizers for giving us the opportunity to be part of this activity. Well, my task is to discuss about IDPs or the internally displaced population or persons. What are the issues, protection issues that they face? Who are they? And what are the legal frameworks related to protecting their rights, especially the children, adolescents, and youth in the context of internal displacement. So yun. Okay. Next slide, please. No. The previous slide on that. Okay. Now, there's a question: who are the IDPs? Who are they? Actually, similar to refugees, like what Christine mentioned earlier. IDPs are a person or a group of persons who has been forced to flee or obliged to leave their homes or habitual places to as a result or to avoid the effects of armed conflict. Uh, Especially in terms of generalized violence, gross violations of human rights, natural and human-made disasters. The IDPs, these are persons who do not cross internationally recognized border, similar to refugees. That there is an element of forced displacement, but within the country. They do not cross any border, unlike what's happening right now in Ukraine, for example. Millions of Ukrainians are fleeing towards Poland and other adjacent countries, and sought refuge there. Those are refugees, while internally displaced persons are populations displaced within our country only, or domestic. So yeah. Okay, next slide, please. Okay. Okay. Now, there are common drivers of displacement: armed conflict, generalized violence, clan feud, or in Mindanao we call that rido, no, rido or clan feud that most often emanated from land dispute, political dispute. No, there are also gross human rights violations or abuses. No, and natural disasters like flash floods, no, droughts, earthquake, no, and typhoons, just like what happened in part of Caraga Region 13 last December, the typhoon Udet. No, and there are also lesser known causes of forced internal displacement, like those human-made or human-induced na mga causes like deforestation, human-made disasters. No, we also have forcible evictions in urban dwellings, no, and rural areas, no, due to development projects. Most often, ang mga affected dito, they are informal settlers. No, there are also informal settlers living in legal easement, for example, in riverbanks and shores. No, and they were advised to be relocated by the government. No, so yun. Globally, in by end of 2021 at the global level, there are over 40 million. That's exactly 48 million recorded, no, na forcibly displaced at the global level. No, based on the records of UNHCR. Okay, and next slide, please. Okay, in our context, in our country, with regards to displacement in our country, as of end of December 2021, UNHCR have recorded over 267,000 displaced population. No, and over over 150K of this figure was displaced in December. No, the bulk of displaced population was due to the typhoon Udet that struck Caraga region in 20 no, in December last year. No, then over 6,000 displaced, no, of this figure, out of this figure, are displaced for more than 30 days, no? And over 108,000 displaced for more than 180 days, meaning they are what we call the protracted IDPs. The protracted IDPs that were displaced since 2013 due to various reasons. For example, the incident in Zamboanga City siege in 2013, the Marawi siege in 2017, and there are also natural disasters resulting in the protracted displacement of affected population, like in Haiyan, in Typhoon Pablo in 2012. There are still many IDPs who are living in transitional shelters until now, no? And durable solution is still elusive for them. No? So yeah, and out of the total figure that we've recorded as of December 2021, 50% of these numbers are coming from the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, which has the highest rate of displacement due to different types of there are a lot of conflict dynamics between the Bangsamoro Islamic Freedom Fighters. There are firefights between AFP state forces and alleged ISIS inspired groups, you know, and it causes massive displacement, you know. And there are still a number of IDPs who are displaced and not able to return until now. So yun. Next slide, please. Okay. Legal basis, no? Ang question dito, do we have a law, no, na specifically crafted to provide protection to IDPs, specifically crafted for internally displaced only? Unfortunately, none until now. There was an attempt before during time of President Benigno Aquino. Unfortunately, pumasa siya from the Congress up to Senate. Then na-veto siya ng President because of some issues, no? And some mga provisions in the provisions of the law that was proposed. So it was vetoed by Benigno Aquino during that time. And right now, we are still working on the IDP bill at the local level, at the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region level. And also, we are supporting the passage of the IDP bill at the national level. So, yun. Okay. Yes, we don't have a specific law for IDPs, but we have a what we call United Nations Guiding Principles on Internal Displacement, which is also founded on international human rights law, international humanitarian law, and international refugee law. Meaning, uh, uh, the foundation of this guiding principle, yes, yet the OMPID is not binding, but founded on three major international legal frameworks: the IHRL, the IHL, and the International Refugee Law. Well, we all know that the IHRL, it guarantees the right of all people at all times, peacetime or conflict or emergencies time. IHL, it guarantees the right of non-combatants in situation of armed conflict, including the combat or those combatants who are wounded but not able to fight anymore. They are called the combat. No? We also have the the IRL, the International Refugee Law. As mentioned by Chrissy earlier, it guarantees the right of refugees not to be forcibly returned to their country of origin, especially when they are subject to persecution and other safety and security concerns. So yun, the principle of non-refoulement, as what Chrissy mentioned earlier. So yun. Next slide, please. I think we are... Okay. Previous slide, Dean. Can you go back there? Okay. Now, the guiding principles on internal displacement, the United Nations guiding principles on internal displacement addresses a range of particular needs and protection risks that typically arises in situation of emergencies, especially internal displacement. The OMPID, it lays down the different themes, important thematic areas like the physical security integrity that ensures right to life, protection from torture and rape, and others. And it also lays down the basic necessities of life, the right to food of every displaced population, the right to water, to adequate shelter, health, and sanitation. And the third one, economic, social, and cultural protection. In every emergency, in every displacement, children, adolescents, and youth, their access to livelihood their access to education are disrupted, resulting in the increase of the number of out of school youth. It also talks about property restitution or compensation, especially to those IDPs whose houses were burned or damaged during conflict, for example, or during natural disasters. And lastly, the civil and political protection issues, the right to personal documentation and to political participation, even if they are displaced, their right to suffrage should still be ensured. With its clear with its clear and concise language, the United Nations guiding principle is a practical tool to address the specific needs of IDPs. And that's what we call needs-based approach. And it addresses or it identifies also the right and guarantees relevant to address the identified needs. And that's what we call the rights-based approach. And also it addresses the all phases of displacement, the prevention, the protection, and the solution phase. And lastly, it facilitates the identification of relevant legal standard. And the OMPID, it's actually divided into four teams. One, the OMPID actually there are 30 or 31 principles, or in the United Nations guiding principles, and it was divided into four key themes. One, protection from displacement, protection during displacement, principles related to humanitarian assistance, and principles related to durable solutions. No? So yun. Next slide, please. Okay. Now, that's OMPID is a international framework wherein Philippines is also a signatory, but this is not binding. No. Uh, but in our country, we have many national legal frameworks that can be used, no, or we can say national laws with reference to displacement. The one, the 1987 Philippine Constitution, Article 2, Section 11, for example, the state values the dignity of every human person and guarantees their full respect for human rights. That's one, based on the 1987 Philippine Constitution, Article 2, Section 11. We also have the Republic Act 9851. The RA 9851 is a nationalization of the IHL, no? Uh, the nationalization of the IHL. This is about Philippine Act on crimes against international humanitarian law, genocide, and other crimes of against humanity. No, so yun. We also have 7610 specifically for our children, no? A special law to protect our children, special protection of children against abuse, exploitation, and discrimination. And in times of disaster, we also have RA 10121 or the DRRM law, no? The Philippine Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Act of 2010. And based on that law, the government formulated or developed the National Disaster Response Plan 2030, and prevention, response, and solutions to emergencies, to disasters, and to displacement were included in the RP 2030. There's a clear guidelines on cluster approach, on what to do, on how to address the protection needs of the IDPs in situation of emergencies. Next slide, please. Now, protection issues. For UNHCR, these are the main areas covered during humanitarian response and being monitored by UNHCR. First, the safety and security. No, IDPs are always at risk to safety and security issues like limited freedom of movement. No, like people are not allowed to go to their farms due to military operation or ongoing firefights or insecurity. No. There are also cases of illegal arrest because some IDPs were suspected as members or supporters of armed groups opposed to armed groups fighting against our state forces. No, and there are also IDPs are also at risk. No, not just IDPs, and also the host communities, affected communities. They are at risk to being caught in crossfire, especially in the context of armed conflict, especially here in Maguindanao, and in the Barm region, in the island provinces of Barm, in eastern Mindanao. There are a lot of cases documented wherein children, even women, even pregnant mother were hit by mortar shellings, no? Aerial bombardment, and were caught in the crossfire during the fight, no, between armed groups and state forces. So that's now, with regards to humanitarian and access to basic services, UNHCR is really focusing on these issues because in every evacuation, in every displacement, issues related to water, sanitation, and hygiene, issues related to education. Children are no longer going to school. There was no education and emergency established in in evacuation centers. The livelihood of IDPs, the livelihood of families affected were disrupted, and they can no longer go back to their, let's say, places of origin to attend to their farms, attend to their livestock. No, these are humanitarian and access to basic services that we are looking in every displacement. No, and as part of our advocacy and part of our task is to monitor, document, and refer these cases, refer these issues to our government counterparts for immediate action. Now, with regards to child protection and gender-based violence, well, During emergencies, women and girls are increasingly vulnerable to gender-based violence as a result of pre-existing gender inequality, then breakdown of community network and structures, then the lack of protection mechanisms because the functionality of let's say barangay in our context, the barangay councils, their functionality are disrupted due to conflict, for example, or due to natural disaster. So the let's say the protection structures at the barangay level, let's say the barangay council for the protection of children or the BCPC are no longer functioning. The BAUCDEX to address or to attend to cases of gender-based violence are no longer functioning also. So that's the situation most often happening during displacement. Also, overcrowding, lack of privacy, limited food and clean water supply, the lack of toilet, no, washing facilities in evacuation centers increase the risk and vulnerabilities of women and girls, no, to gender-based violence and exploitation and abuse, no. Moreover, human traffickers, view post-disaster situations as opportunities to recruit and exploit vulnerable individuals who lost their loved ones, shelter, their livelihood, and are desperate to survive and provide for their families. And when they engage to these traffickers, normally this is clearly a negative coping mechanism in order to survive, and which is very alarming. No. Next, documentation. The loss of documents, important documents, no, limit the access of IDPs or internally displaced persons to access government services. Example, the schooling of children, since need the birth certificates, for example, are needed, no, before they can enroll, no. Another one, access to basic services, needing proof documents, for example, like marriage contracts, passport, and etc. No, so that's how important a document is. No? And that's why in every as part of preparedness we are asking communities to ensure that their documents are in safe and they should not leave it when they uh, evacuate, no, or leave their homes. Yeah. Next, durable solution. The durable solution in our context, it's very elusive and not sustainable due to continued instability, uh, especially in the armed conflict context. No? Um, uh, in our location, for example, here in Cotabato City or in Maguindanao, the conflict is cyclical, recurring, no, and resulting to multiple displacement. In 2 months, some families are displaced for twice, thrice. No, in a year they are displaced for twice to four times. No, in a year. There are municipalities in our areas wherein people are experiencing multiple displacement. Yeah. And lastly, the issue about human housing, land, and property rights. No, property ownership might be difficult, no, to prove if you lost your documents, if you lost your land title documents. No, housing, land, and property issues. This is also very prevalent in areas wherein there are a lot of hazard zones or declared by the government or by the DENR, Department of Environment and Natural Resources, as no build zone, for example, because they are living within legal easement of river banks and shores. So they are encouraged to vacate the area and relocate. No, so we have no problem about relocation so long as it is done, no, humanely and with a proper process, not forced eviction. No, and it should be humane. Okay. Last slide, please. Okay. Simple quiz. No. Now, there are 4 questions. Can IDPs insist that they don't want to return to their places of origin? No. Uh, I hope this is face to face, but unfortunately we are on virtual, so I will answer it directly. No, can IDPs insist that they don't want to return and they just, let's say, stay in their evacuation center? Well, the answer is yes. They have the right to say no. We don't want to return yet, especially when their safety and security are at least, no, are at risk. When their livelihood, uh, when they don't no longer source of livelihood, uh, their capital is also affected. They no longer have shelter because it was damaged or burned. For example, in the context of armed conflict, in the context of typhoon, it was totally damaged and washed out. No, if these are the conditions, for example, in their places of origin, the IDPs have the right to say no. They have the freedom of choice to say, no, we are not going to return yet, and we want to stay in evacuation center because of this situation. Second question, are people in evacuation center entitled to police protection against crime, and why? No. Yes, they have, no, because it reinforces right to life, liberty and security that comes within their situation as an IDP. No, uh, prevention and protection and solution is clearly stated in the United Nations guiding principles. No, and of course in different national frameworks that we have, no, legal frameworks that we have, no, including during, after displacement. No, the rights, no, do not change regardless of circumstances. No, in times of peace or conflict, rights of our persons of concerns remain the same. Third, can we can people in all cases oppose evacuation orders from the government? Well, the state has the responsibility or authority to ensure everyone in its territory uh, is safe and secure. They have the right to force the people, especially if safety uh, and health of this population are at risk, no, including in times of disaster. The law allows for zero casualty, for example, in the RA 1121 as basis for enforcing the law, especially in high risk areas or danger areas or hazard zones. No, the right of the government to force them to vacate, no, is valid. Also, based on the IHRL, no, the right to freedom of movement can be suspended, no, for two reasons: health, if the health and security are at risk. No, so yun. What we are saying is there are two types of eviction: forced eviction and eviction. Forced eviction when the relocation, the evacuation of population does not undergo proper consultation and not based on legal processes. No, there should always be proper consultation and processes before you relocate people who are considered at risk because of their location, who are or they're living in hazard zones, like that. Last, does non-discrimination mean that everyone should receive the same goods and services in situation of displacement? Well, that's absolute equality. What we want is equity. No? What we're saying is equity. It is really necessary to have assessment of the needs, no, of the IDPs. It's ensuring do no harm principle. Not necessarily blanket distribution would be beneficial, and we have to consider specific needs of different sectors. Example, food, livelihood, skill sets. No, we need to be sensitive also on the culture, gender, and traditions, no, of our persons of concerns. Meaning, there are sector-specific assistance and needs that we need to look to, no, and consider. So that's it, and that's the end of my presentation. And I hope if you have questions, just type it and we will try to answer. Over to Christine again.
Hi, Christine. Hi, Sir Elton. Thank you for really that very, very passionate discussion. But they're saying for the questions that you have for UNHCR, you can just send it to gpyph@globalpeace.org. Once again, that's gpyph@globalpeace.org for your questions for UNHCR. But maraming salamat po, Ms. Christine Salinas and Mr. Elson Monato for enlightening us. Let's please give them a round of applause. Our next speaker will share her experts about our topic. Together for safe conversations. With the freedom of speech comes the responsibility to listen, valuing freedom of speech for every individual. To be able to freely express oneself, it is a vital part of establishing safe spaces, may it be at home, at school, at work, or even on social media platforms. Free speech defines the DNA of our democracy. It is our fundamental right, but definitely not absolute. Our speaker is a professor from the Department of Speech Communication and Theater Arts and is currently the head of the UP Diliman Office of Anti-Sexual Harassment. She finished her Bachelor in Arts degree in Speech and Drama, acquired her Master's in Arts in Speech Communication, and obtained her Doctor in Philosophy, PhD in Anthropology. She is a proud core member of the Cyber Guardians Philippines, working together with other volunteers for a safer cyberspace for everyone, especially the children and the youth. To understand further how we can enable ourselves and others to continuously champion for safe conversations, please all welcome. She was also my professor in college, Dr. Teresa Paula S. De Luna.
Thank you very much, Global Peace Foundation, and in cooperation with Consuelo Foundation, for inviting Cyber Guardians to be part of this momentous endeavor. So I will request the organizers to share my slides. Thank you. Okay, so let's start. Speech. Okay, so I'm here to talk about speech, and then speech again is a very important and very normal. It's something that we do every day, and speech is a gift from God. That's very important. Speech is a gift from God we humans enjoy. I say this in the most literal and factual manner. Our vocal organs are sophisticatedly designed in such a way that make us able to utter intelligible and meaningful sounds. Next slide, please. Our mouth, as you can see in the slide, which will be shown in a bit. Next slide, please. Yes, thank you very much. Our mouth, the pharyngeal cavity, as you can see it in the photo, we have the previous slide, please. Balik po tayo. The previous slide, please. The next, the second slide. Yeah, parang meron tayong, we could have some sort of instructional thing here first. So the gift of speech. I was talking about the gift of speech. We have the mouth here. So you can see in the photo representation of the mouth and the different vocal organs included there. So we have the mouth, the pharyngeal cavity, you have the nasal pharynx, soft palate, oral pharynx, etc. Articulators. Articulators, we have the teeth, our tongue, our mouth. All of these vocal mechanism are given to us by God so that we can shape words, sentences, which will pave the bridge or the link from our thoughts to from our minds to tangible symbolic representations or simply our utterances. the speech that we return to other humans, say to other humans. You see, we are the only species given this ability or gifted with this ability, the ability to speak, SPEAK. However, there is a caveat with such a wonderful gift. We are also given an important responsibility in making sure we use such gift for the betterment of the society and not for the detriment or destruction of humanity. So we must remember that speech, we should use speech, this gift, for the betterment of each one of us. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm TP De Luna, as mentioned by Mika, a professor of speech communication and anthropologist from the UP or University of the Philippines. And I am, as stated a while ago, a proud core member of Cyber Guardians Philippines. Today, I am thankful to be given this opportunity to share with you what I know about the gift of speech, at least some of it. So here, we talk about speech and the freedom of such human expression, of course, as stipulated in our Philippine Constitution, and how the skill of listening essentially and especially aids in creating a safe space for each one of us. Next slide, please. As humans, we are inherently and genetically social. This is evidenced by the fundamental functions. Next slide, please. Slide 3. This is evidenced by the fundamental functions of speech, such as sharing our information or our ideas, creating and maintaining relationships with one another, and engaging in debates or discourses, where in the process we are able to express our sentiments and emotions. So speech gives us the avenue or makes possible for us to share ideas, make meaningful relationships, and engage in conversations or dialogues. Without a doubt, there is a direct relation and connection between speech and our being social, our being humans. And this existence, though beautiful, perfect, and harmonious as it may seem, creates a difficult, inevitable situation. What happens when we disagree because we are different? What happens when we disagree because of diversity? You see, diversity is another gift to humans. Somewhere or sometime in our lives, we were told or we could hear people saying that each one of us is unique and special, and that is true. We are different from one another, but we have similarities as well. But this diversity or our differences is another gift. It is a reason, primary reason why our species still exist or survive from what, 300,000 years ago? Yes, I think that's about it. 300,000 years ago, the Homo sapiens. But that's another interesting topic, right? Perhaps for a different event. Now let's proceed with freedom of speech and our responsibility. Next slide, please. Again, what happens when our diversity or diverse opinions clash? Next slide, please. When that happens, the gift of speech, the freedom of speech, what happens when it results to misinformation, hate, violence, or war? As you can see in the photos here, these are heartbreaking, horrible photos of the abuse of speech, of the freedom of speech. Because of the freedom of speech of others, other people are not given that freedom anymore or relegated to the gutters. For instance, the war in Ukraine. For instance, the red tagging in the Philippines. As you can see here, though, it's not just the war in Ukraine, the invasion of Ukraine by Russia that's photographed here. But World War II. As you can see here, the black and white photo, you could see that this is a photo of children in Manila during World War II. And this was brought on by the speech or speeches of Hitler. So that is a testament of the diversity of cultures, of people, of mind, thoughts of people from different cultures, different geographical locations. So, what must we do? Next slide, please. What must we do? How should we take responsibility? We should activate another gift. I'm sorry, there's a delay in the slide presentation. But anyways, next slide, please. Thank you. No worries. No problem. So what must we do? We take responsibility. We should activate another gift. Next slide, please. And that's the gift of listening. The gift of listening, next slide please, is the key to our survival. You see, this gift has a special and critical power. Listening has the power to prevent humanity from self destruction. What does listening do? It prepares us to discourse, especially with others who we disagree with. See, listening is very difficult when we do not agree with the people we are listening to. So it is an active uh, way or deed that we engage in. It is a gift. It is difficult. So we need to develop it to better make use of it, to prevent being fooled or duped into believing fake news, disinformation, misinformation that could lead to hating others, like our cancel culture, and even starting a war or joining a war. What is listening and how do we listen effectively? Next slide, please. So now I will give you the fundamentals of listening. How do we listen effectively? Because listening effectively is the key, again, to prevent hate. Okay. So the first one is the listening process. We have three fundamentals. We look at the listening process, we look at the functions of listening, and then we look at the barriers of listening. Okay, so listening has three processes which can easily be dissolved into three phases: hearing, understanding, and remembering. What do we hear? We hear sounds. We hear sounds in the environment. So everything that we absorb, we receive, that goes for the first phase. And then the second phase is understanding. So what do we understand? We understand to what we've heard. We understand the sounds we've received via our ears by identifying and recognizing if those sounds belong to a certain language. See, we cannot know all languages, right? So there will be sounds coming from different languages. So obviously, we are able to understand English and Filipino and other Filipino languages. So here we have to understand, we have to identify and recognize, does this sound belong to, let's say, the Filipino language? Does this sound belong to the Korean language? I know that the youngsters today love K-pop. Okay, so some of you would even memorize songs with the lyrics in the Korean language. But the next stage is remembering. Do you remember? What is remembering? You remember the sounds, right? But can you put meaning to those sounds? Is it meaningful for you? Does it really tackle your past, your present, and your future? For instance, the word love. Okay, love is a universal feeling, right? It's something that I think most of us here in the webinar is familiar. Everyone is familiar with. When we think about love, we hear love, the sound love seems familiar, and then we identify and recognize it as a term in, let's say, the English language. And then what do we do now when we try to remember it? Because if you cannot remember what it means, then it's not listening. Okay, I remember when I was in college, I used to have a very high grade, I think uno. And then when I was asked right now, oh, what is this? What is the meaning of this? What is the meaning of that? And I couldn't even answer that simple question. It meant I did not go through the listening process. What happened to me was just up to the identifying and recognizing the understanding part. But I do not remember. If I do not remember, you do not remember, then that wasn't listening. Because listening is activating all your sensory impressions, your sense of taste. So, what is the taste of love? What is the vision of love? What is the smell of love? I hope you get my point. So listening is a process. It is an active process, starts with hearing, understanding, and remembering. Okay, next slide, please. So we listen also for enjoyment. We listen for information, we listen for critical discernment, and for empathy. The next slide that I'm supposed to talk about is about the functions of listening. Why do we listen? The first one is for appreciation. Listening for appreciation is very easy. What do we listen to so that we enjoy it? We listen to people who we agree with, right? So when we listen to people who we agree with, that's enjoyable. It boosts our confidence. It makes us happy, etc. But we listen also for information. That is one basic function of listening. We listen for information, and when we do that, we need to be very careful. We need to be very careful to verify if what we are listening to will be indeed information or facts or merely opinions or, God forbid, lies. So when we listen for information, it is actually a sense that we decide if what we're listening to is a piece of information or not, right? So when we do this, we need to check whether the information we are listening to, is indeed information, so that for the next function of listening, the critical discernment, we are able to decide. Listening for critical discernment is when we make judgments. When we have judgments, when we judge, that's when we discern. That's listening for discernment. And this is important and vital in our lives because we decide for so many things that will not only affect us individually, but our fellow humans. For instance, come the elections, we need to use critical discernment to be able to decide who to vote for, who will be our leaders that will work for the betterment of our society, not for the detriment or its destruction. And finally, we listen for empathy. And empathy is a function of listening which is so humane. It is about humanity, being kind to others, being able to put ourselves in the position of others so that we will understand one another and we will not immediately hate one another. If we do this, I think we will have a better um, future, a better bet for our future. And next slide, please. Thank you very much. Ayan, advanced na. And noise. Of course, when we listen, and listening is a difficult activity, right? There are noises or barriers of listening which we need to be aware of and beware of. The physical noise. So when we want to listen, we must make sure that we can receive the sounds clearly. And some physical noises would be the loudness, perhaps the loudness or softness, no, the softness of a sound. If the sound is too soft, we cannot listen to it. That's why there's an audio tech a while ago. You test your tech in like in webinars, because it's very important that the sounds are received well. So that's the physical noise. Then we have the physiological noise. The physiological noise or biological noise translates simply in what we feel in our body. If we have a stomach ache, if we have a headache, then we cannot focus on listening. For psychological, the psychological noise is quite challenging, because the psychological noise would be a combination of what we believe in, what we absorb in terms of information, what are taught to us in the different institutions we belong to. For instance, we belong to different institutions, or we call it in the academic world the ideological state apparatuses, like the media. We listen to media. There is influence there. There's influence from the family. There is influence from the church, and there's influence from the government. So all these influences will come together in our minds, and we will decide which ones do we support, which ones do we relegate to lower priority, which ones are important, which ones are unimportant. So that's the psychological noise. And sometimes it sucks because we believe in something. For instance, in church, we believe that hurting other people is bad, right? You do not hurt people because that's bad, according to our religion. For most religion, I think all religion would not, campaign for hurting other people or killing other people. However, why do other people negotiate and justify death and killing of other people? Why? And these are all given to us through speech. These are all given to us, and we listen to those, and then we decide. So those are psychological noises. And then, of course, we have the social noises. Social is really a combination of our culture and our involvement and engagement with different groups of people. So that could be, no, that is part, not could be, but that is part of your social noise. So next slide, please. I'm about to end my presentation. As promised, it will be quick. Okay, again. Okay, next slide, please. So we should remember, right, that listening is not an easy task. And we should remember what Spider-Man says. I hope, I don't know if you've seen the current Spider-Man movie, but Spider-Man says, with great power, okay, in this talk, that power is the freedom of speech, comes great responsibility. And we can fulfill that responsibility through listening. And if each one of us can take time to develop this gift, our hope and dream for better and safer spaces may indeed come true. Next slide, please. Maraming salamat po. And I hope, ayan, sabi ko kasi dun sa aking last slide is maraming salamat po. Love and peace for everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you to Dr. Teresa Paula S. De Luna for sharing with us your thoughts. We now move on to the Q&A. So to our viewers, please send us your questions via your chat box, your comment section. And also, do not forget to tweet your takeaway with the hashtag Safe Spaces for all faces. Okay. Ma'am TP, my question for you is, do you think that there is a limit in expressing our opinions? If yes, in which situations?
Yes, I think there is a limit. There's always a limit because it is imperative for the order of peace and order of the society. If our hate or if our speech would relate to inciting someone to hate others, to kill another person, there is a limit, and that is part of humanity, and that's why it's difficult. It's difficult to listen to people with, you know, using a justification that the freedom of speech is a right. With that right, you have this responsibility to maintain humanity, and humanity is taught to us, no, not just in school but in the family, in other institutions. So we have to be vigilant in making sure that our institutions really campaign for such, not for hate.
Thank you very much, Dr. De Luna. Thank you for joining us today. And a round of applause for Dr. De Luna. Thank you once again to Dr. Teresa Paula De Luna, Ms. Christine Salinas, and Mr. Elson Monato for the first part. And at this point, we will be announcing the first 5 winners of 1,000 pesos GCash. So yung mga masipag na nag-tweet dyan, it is time to find out if you won. Okay, excited na ba kayo? Make sure to keep tweeting. Use the hashtag Safe Spaces for All Faces. Winners were chosen based on your best takeaway tweets of impactful lessons learned from our speakers. So to all the winners, congratulations to... I'm waiting for... Okay, first we have... Bernard 58045971. Freedom of speech is a gift from a democratic country, but with limitations. Sometimes it causes fake news. Think before you talk. Hashtag safe spaces for all faces. Next winner, we have Master Ruben. That's M-A-Z. Master Ruben. Safe space is really fundamental to an integrated approach to security. The provision of it is thus a vital component of an effective community that also aims to create an experiential learning environment for at-risk youth. Very well said, Master Ruben. Our next winner, Joshi, with 3 Ys, Joshi AC. Every one of us has a responsibility to be a safe space. I love that. We can do this by listening to people intently, without judgment, but with empathy. Be the strength for the weak, despite dangers. I strive to be a safe space. Hashtag safe spaces for all faces. Hashtag safe spaces to brave spaces. Next, we have our 4th winner. So we had Bernard, we had Ruben, we had Joshi. Now our 4th, we have Sydney Joseph 07. I believe that these principles must be put into action. Our country must dedicate itself towards tangible response by institutionalizing policies to guarantee its realization. It's time we work on the ground. Hashtag safe spaces for all faces. Hashtag safe spaces to brave spaces. And we again, Bernard 58. I believe we've mentioned him already. So that's just 4 winners. 1, Bernard, Master Ruben. 2, Joshi. 3, Sydney Joseph. 4, we will have space for 1 more winner. That we will just announce later on during the second half. So for now, 4 winners of the 1,000 pesos GCash. Congratulations again. Please send an email to gpyph@globalpeace.org to claim your prize. Congratulations once again to all our winners. Right now, we move on to our next topic of the Safe Spaces Summit in the Philippines. Our topic is about safe spaces for children, a safe space for young children to be children. Because, COVID-19 fatigue is real. Yes, we can all agree to that. And a truly challenging phenomenon that has had an impact on our well being in some way, right? Especially on children who are stuck at home, who cannot physically go to school, and did not have enough physical interactions. So, our next speaker is a policy advocacy and communication development practitioner with more than 30 years of experience managing nonprofit advocacy organizations and communication and advocacy programs. He has extensive experience and training in designing and implementing communication campaigns using the behavior change communication approach and utilizing music, video, and films to popularize social issues and advocacy interventions. Rom writes music professionally and is a member of the Philippine Society of Composers, Authors, and Publishers, PhilSCAP. Let's welcome our next speaker, the Executive Director of the Philippine Legislators Committee on Population and Development, Mr. Romeo Dongueto.
Hello, hi, good afternoon. Thank you, Mika, for that introduction. Let's wait for my presentation. Of course, I would like to thank the Global Peace Foundation and the Consuelo Foundation for this opportunity. My task is to discuss the prospects and challenges of ending child marriage in the Philippines. During the early part of our campaign for our Congress to enact a bill that will prohibit child marriage in the country, many people, even legislators, are not aware that there is high prevalence of child marriage in the Philippines. And we know that child marriage is one of the gravest forms of violence against women and girls. It violates many human rights of women and girls, including and most especially the right to sexual and reproductive health and development. And the high prevalence of early and child marriage in the Philippines is because it is deeply embedded in our culture with religious, social, legal, and political moorings. This is the reason why for so many years efforts to change the status quo has been largely unsuccessful and quite difficult. This cultural practice has continued despite the adoption of laws in recent years relevant to this issue, such as the Family Code of the Philippines, the Anti-Violence Against Women and Their Children Act, the Anti-Rape Law, the Anti-Sexual Harassment Law, the Anti-Trafficking of Persons Act, and most especially RA 7610, which is the Special Protection of Children Against Abuse, Exploitation, and Discrimination Act. And very recent, of course, is the Magna Carta of Women and the RH Law, among others. Okay, let's look at our slides to start the discussion and to know more about child marriage. Let's define what child marriage is. Child marriage, any marriage. Previous slide, please. Previous slide, please. Can we go back, please? At least 2 slides before this one. Okay. It's any marriage entered into where one or both spouses are children and solemnized in civil or church proceedings or in any recognized traditional, cultural, and customary manner. So that's the definition of RA 11596, which is the prohibition of child marriage law. Now, what is the issue? The issue is a child simply cannot give free and full consent to marriage because she is not sufficiently mature. And there are discussions among psychologists, child psychologists, and advocates that a person matures towards the middle of her or his 20s, around 25, 26. So a child who is only 10, 13, or even 15 cannot give her free and full consent to a very serious matter, especially on marriage. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. There is delay. Okay. Child marriage contravenes, no? It runs opposed to many of our commitments to international human rights agreements and instruments, including the United Nations Convention on the Consent to Marriage, the minimum age to marriage and registration of marriage. These are during the 60s, no? Can you imagine that? UN Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Violence Against Women, the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, and the Program of Action adopted by the International Conference on Population and Development in the 1994 very historic conference held in Cairo. And these are just some of the international instruments that our country committed to, no? To promote and protect the rights of children in the Philippines. Now, let's go to the prevalence of child marriage in our country. And of course, many of us are aware that this is happening not only in the communities or in the region where our Muslim sisters and brothers reside, but also this is also happening in the communities of our indigenous peoples, no? Indigenous Filipinos. So the Philippines ranks 10 globally in terms of absolute number of child marriages. Pang-sampu po tayo sa listahan sa buong mundo, where there is a very huge number of child marriages. 15% of women aged 20 to 24 years were first married or in union before they reached the age of 18. And 2% of women aged 20 to 24 years were first married before the age of 50. 1 out of 6 Filipino girls marry before the age of 18. So ganyan po, no? This is how serious the problem of child marriage in the country. And there are so determinants, as I've mentioned earlier. No? There are reasons why this problem persists despite the presence of the many laws and our commitments to international human rights instruments and accords. Number one, poverty. Usually, even if we compare our experience to other countries in Asia, even in Africa, no? Poverty resides in those places. There is chronic poverty in communities where there are many cases of child marriage. Cultural practices, as I've mentioned earlier, no? Tanggap po ito sa ating mga komunidad. At dahil tanggap, nagaganap po yan nang hindi po yan na nababantayan ng ating mga otoridad, no? Even the police and social welfare offices. We do not ask anymore of the question of how old is the child, because we can see from her face that she's too young, and there are reports that as young as 13, no, pinapakasal po ng sapilitan. Families honor, no? Meron pong ganyan tayong kultura. Yung pong sinasabing palabra de honor ng mga magulang, and control over girls' sexuality. Parents tend to control the sexuality, no? Of their children, and without even knowing paano ito nagde-develop, no? As they grow, no? As they age. Hindi po yan nababantayan because sexuality is taboo inside the home. Security. We've heard of RIDO, no? Yung armed conflict between families in some places, in the provinces, in the south, and even in some areas in northern part of the Philippines. So what are the implications of child marriage? A girl faces immediate and lifelong consequences. Dropping out of school, hindi na po magpapatuloy ng pag-aaral. Early pregnancy, physical and sexual abuse, and higher risk of perpetuating intergenerational poverty. Yung kahirapan, papasa-pasa mula sa magulang hanggang sa anak. And according to PSA, in 2013, 20% of ever married women aged 15 to 49 have experienced domestic and or intimate partner violence since age 15. There is high probability of violence in this kind of problem in child marriages, especially if the child is married to an older person, an older man. So let's have some details on the consequences of child marriage, especially on health. Yeah. 1 in every 10 women and girls aged 15 to 19 years old is already a mother, no? So early pregnancy, early child pregnancy, mataas po yan because of child marriage. 62,510 children gave birth in 2019. 2,411 were very young age, and very young age are 10 to 14 years old. No? 7 very young age pregnancies po yan every day. Tama po ba yan? In 2017 NDHS. That's the National Demographic and Health Survey. Maternal conditions rank first among the cause of death among females aged 15 to 19. Hindi pa po handa. The body is not yet ready for childbearing and pregnancy. No? At pagpapanganak, kaya marami pong namamatay. Pregnancy and childbirth-related complications among 15 to 24 years old mothers account for 22% of all maternal deaths in the country. Next slide, please. And these are the consequences in terms of the development of a person, of a child, and other social outcomes. Married girls lose the chances to be educated and gain skills and knowledge, which will help her gain a good job, a decent job and decent income for herself and for her family. And child marriage contributes to higher rates of school dropouts, especially among girls. Next slide, please. Let's move to the law, which is RA 11596. No? Now, this law has been signed by the president recently. Well, the news said that the president signed the law in December 10 of last year, and December 10 being the International Human Rights Day. Now, RA 11596, or the law prohibiting child marriage, is a landmark legislation that seeks to end harmful traditions and cultural practices that contribute to violence against women and girls. And it directs the national and local governments to take the responsibility to end child marriage and for the meaningful implementation of the law through information dissemination and provision of services. Let's look at the main provisions of RA 11596. In its declaration of policy, it states the state shall abolish all traditional. Sorry, can you go back to that slide, please? Can you go back to the slide, please? Okay, the state shall abolish all tradition. This is important, no? That's why I want to read this to you and for you to understand the meaning of this provision. The state is now committed, no, to abolish all traditional and cultural practices and structures that perpetuate discrimination, abuse, and exploitation of children, such as the practice of child marriage. Next slide, please. Okay, so still on section 1, the state affirms that marriage shall be entered only into with the free and full consent of capacitated parties. Ibig sabihin, from here on, the state will affirm, no, that marriage shall only happen between parties with free and full consent, no, and that they are capacitated. At mamaya po pag-uusapan natin, ano ibig sabihin ng capacitated parties? Meaning, dinidikta po ng batas na hindi na po pwede ang child marriage at 18 po, no? 18 po ang legal na edad ng pagpapakasal. Kahit na nga po yung 18, even if you're 18, you need parental consent for marrying another person, no? Especially a young person like you. Now, alam ko po, pag 23, doon pa lang po pwedeng magpakasal kahit walang parental consent. Now, pursuant to these policies, the state now views child marriage as a practice constituting child abuse. And we know child abuse was already defined in 7610, that's RA 7610, as an unlawful act. No? Pinaparusahan na po ng batas pag po child abuse yan. No? Next slide, please. Now, let's go to the details of this law. Any person who causes, fixes, facilitates child marriage shall suffer penalty of prison mayor. And prison mayor, no, hindi na po natin isa-isahin yan. Ibig sabihin, if you're a parent, if you're a guardian, you can be punished under this law if you causes, fixes, facilitates child marriage. You can be imprisoned from 8 to 12 years, no? And yung prison mayor. And you will be fined from 40 to 50,000 pesos. Next slide, please. Sige po, hintayin lang natin. Okay, any person who produces, prints, issues, and or distributes fraudulent documents. And these documents can be birth certificates, affidavits, or delayed registration of births, and or foundling certificates for the purpose of misrepresenting age of a child to facilitate child marriage. Ikaw din po ay paparusahan sa ilalim ng batas na ito. If the perpetrator is a public officer, medyo seryoso po ito, he or she shall be dismissed from the service and may be perpetually dismissed, no? Depende po sa court, from holding office. So, you can be perpetually disqualified from holding office. Now, for the solemnization of child marriage, any person who performs or officiates a child marriage shall suffer the penalty of prison mayor. No? Ganon din po yan, from 8 to 12 years old, to 12 years na pagkakakulong and fine not less than 50,000. And if the perpetrator is public officer, he or she can lose the job, her job, no? Or his job, and can be perpetually disqualified, depende po sa diskresyon ng korte. Now, cohabitation of an adult with child outside wedlock. Ano po ibig sabihin nito? Yung pong live-in. Out of wedlock, cohabitation. Isang adult ay makikipagrelasyon sa isang bata, no? Below 18 years old, kayo ay mapaparusahan ng prison mayor. Maximum period, no? And a fine of not less than 50,000. At kung ikaw ay public officer, again, you can lose your job and you can be perpetually dismissed from service. Next slide, please. Now, to reinforce the prohibition of the criminalization, which is the main, no, the main intention of the law is to criminalize child marriage. Marami pong mga programs and will mobilize the other agencies of the government to provide services and programs for girls and her families. No? Empowerment of children through provision of information, skills, and support networks. Kakaroon din po ng access to complete a quality education. She can receive a provision from our government agencies of economic support and incentives, application of strategic interventions to influence and empower parents. So there will also be interventions, no, to correct po yung nakagawian na, yung kultura na sa community by providing support to parents and families of children. Now, I would like to share you the milestone in the efforts to legislate this very important measure. In 2017, when PLCPD and other partners launched the multi-sectoral legislative campaign in ending child marriage, we started with our partners in the region, in BARM. So we are very fortunate to have partners from the sector of the youth and children. So the people who are in front of the struggles are actually young leaders from BARM. Aside from our champions in Congress, no, our champion in the Senate is Senator Leticia Rama-Shahani, and in the lower house who championed this bill in the lower house or in the House of Representatives, I'm sorry, are Congresswoman Bernadette Herrera, Congressman Edsel Lagman, and Congresswoman Malu Acosta Alba. Now, in 2018, we filed the first bill prohibiting child marriage in the country. It stalled for many, actually for more than a year, or even for close to 2 years. So it stalled in a committee because it was shall we say, it was not prioritized. No, it was in the back burner of the committee because of many concerns of that committee. And it was only during the transfer of this bill to the Committee on Women, chaired by our chair, Congresswoman Malu Acosta, our chair in PLCPD, only that this bill was hastened. No? It moved finally, and it was finally adopted into law. Now, in 2020, despite the COVID-19 pandemic, the organizations who are part of the Girl Defenders Alliance, no, sustained even online, no, our advocacies to push this measure forward. And in 2021, the approval in Congress and the signing of the President in last December 10 of the very successful campaign, the law is now RA 11596, and it is the prohibition of child marriage in the Philippines. Now, let's see some pictures, no? And these are the pictures that will tell you how our sisters and brothers from BARM, no, trooped to Manila to talk with legislators and to hold they attended press conferences and meetings with civil society and meet face-to-face with legislators and the committees in Congress. And during the COVID-19 pandemic, we held many online activities, online rallies and seminars, webinars like this. Now, this is the last slide. I want to discuss a bit of how do we see ourselves from here on, no? Especially for our partners and you. I hope you can contribute on this efforts. No? Number one, pursue capacity building with our local officials in BARM and in many places where child marriage is happening. We need to increase the capacities of our community and religious leaders to understand the objectives and provisions of this law. We need to launch information campaign to popularize the law in schools and communities, expand and consolidate the Girl Defenders Alliance and No More Children Having Children campaigns. These both are platforms led by PLCPD to come up with concrete actions, especially now that we're preparing for the 19th Congress starting July this year. And there will be more advocacies that we need to work on to push with our new set of legislators. We also encourage you to write our parliamentarians from the Bangsamoro Transition Authority to express our support for this law, for RA 11596, and our solidarity with the young people in the Philippines and in Barmen and other places. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. That was a very, very impactful message, and might I add, very, very relevant. We do have a question for you, sir. It is, how can we uproot child marriage in religious and cultural traditions?
Now, as I've mentioned earlier, it is part of part of our tradition, and it is. And some people believe that it's also part of the teachings of their religion. That is a very, shall we say, a big concern for advocates like us. But it is a process of, that's why our call is for us to continue to engage our leaders, community leaders, religious leaders. No, we need to discuss with them the intention of the law, and the intention of the law is not about opposing the autonomy, no, the autonomy of religion and the teachings of religion. Our objective is to promote the rights of children and to ensure that there is peace, especially in regions where there is war, because we believe that when women are empowered and they were given all the opportunities, equal, no, opportunities to what boys and men are having in this country, whatever is your religion is, no, peace will prevail and development will surely happen.
So thank you very much, Sir Romeo. It really is our responsibility to do our part, but at the same time, respect religion, but rally behind advocacies and organizations that push for the rights of children. So thank you, sir, for sharing your insights with us. And to everybody here, please, you can still tweet by sending us your thoughts and your key takeaways by using the hashtag Safe Spaces for all faces, because we still have that Twitter contest ongoing. Okay. Now, thank you once again, Sir Romeo, and to all who participated in the question and answer so far. Thank you, sir. We now move on to the next topic, inclusion, helping all students belong in your classroom. So this requires practicing inclusivity in a classroom. Safe schools is an all hazards approach to keeping children safe from violence, natural and everyday hazards, and conflict in and around school, especially in light of the fact that we all appear to be disconnected, and our only way to communicate and educate the youth is through online platforms such as Google Meet and Zoom. So we must focus on how we can still make these platforms safe and inclusive for all. That is why we invited the community manager of Canva for Pinoy teachers, Canva's online community of nearly 60,000 Filipino K-12 educators. He empowers Pinoy teachers as a member of the PH social content and community team by keeping them supported and engaged as they discover Canva as an educational tool in their classrooms. And to give us ideas on how we can make online learning safe and inclusive, let's all welcome Mr. Chris De Vera.
Okay, hello everyone. Thank you to the organizers for having me on behalf of Canva Philippines. And thank you, Mika, for that great introduction. So, okay, you can see my screen right now, and I'll be talking about inclusion and how you can help practice inclusivity in your classroom. So, I'll try to keep this presentation fun, a bit more engaging. So, let's go to the next slide. Oh, sorry, I'm the one controlling my slides pala. So, I'll start with a question. In the comments, can you let me know, have you tried Canva before? You can type number 1 if you're not yet a Canva user. You can type number 2 if you already are a Canva user. And there's an option for number 3 if you are a self-proclaimed Canva lover. Okay. So I'll talk a little more about Canva later for those who are not yet familiar. But I just want to get a sense of how familiar you might be with Canva. And while you're answering my icebreaker question, I'll introduce myself again. So my name is Chris, and I'm a community manager at Canva Philippines. Are there any members, any audience members here who are part of the Canva for Pinoy teachers community? If you are, so I'm the admin there. You might see me a lot there posting, replying to your comments, running contests, and etc. So I'll be sharing today from the perspective of the admin of that group and from the perspective of a former student. So I'm not a teacher by profession, but I deal with them every day, and I see all of the great inclusive practices that they implement in their classrooms. So I can see the comments now. I'm very happy to see several number 3 answers. So siguro mga teachers kayo that have been using Canva regularly in your schoolwork. So I'm hoping that Canva has helped make it inclusive for all your students to be able to participate. And I'll be talking more about that later. So before we go into the topic of inclusion, let me just introduce what Canva is. So Canva is an online design tool that enables you to easily create beautiful and engaging designs with thousands of templates, sorry, forgot the S there, to choose from. So think of it as a website, an app, where you can just search for almost any type of design, and there's a template that you can start with and edit to your heart's desire. So it might help to understand Canva more by understanding what does creating a design, creating a video, a lesson plan, or a presentation, how does it usually happen? It's very complicated usually. You have a long process of maybe purchasing some software, watching YouTube tutorials, looking for photos online, downloading a font, slicing images, etc. It's very complicated, and for the teachers who are watching today, it's a lot to ask for you to do on top of your normal teaching. So what Canva has done is we've made it simple and integrated. So we've put together almost all of the aspects of design into one website, into one app, so that you don't anymore have to open many tabs to get your images, to get your fonts. So now it's all in one, where you have access to so many images, videos, GIFs, elements, illustrations, and lots of editing tools. If you agree that Canva is the easiest editing tool, please give me maybe a thumbs up in the comments if you agree with that. And for those who haven't heard Canva yet, well, it's never too late. We actually have 388,000 teachers already who are regularly using Canva for education. So you'll see here some teachers editing in school. They're actually editing graduation photos. And just to inspire everyone today, so Canva has empowered teachers to become graphic designers, photographers, layout artists. So we can see here some examples from the community, from Canva for Pinoy teachers. We've seen teachers really go into the multimedia space, editing video lessons, or this one on the right, see teacher Maisel, she took photos of herself and then she removed her background in Canva and replaced it with a studio backdrop that was also available in Canva. So really, we give you all the tools, but the creativity is yours, and now you can really express your creativity. And if you haven't tried Canva yet, it's very easy. You just need to go to canva.com on a laptop or a desktop. If your students only have a tablet or a phone, pwede din, they can also access it through the browser, or better yet, install the app on their tablet or phone. So just go to canva.com. You actually don't need to install anything, and it's very inclusive because it runs on almost any device. As long as the device can open the internet, access the internet, it can run Canva. So we don't need high-end computers for this to allow students to create their designs. I also want to take a moment to appreciate our sign language interpreter, Patrick. So I'm very happy with the organizers for walking the talk when it comes to inclusion, because having the sign language interpreter is one great manifestation already of being inclusive to audiences who may be who may be hard of hearing. Okay, so the topic is inclusion. So what does inclusion mean in the context of a classroom? So I got this definition from Ollie Ryan from a recent article, and it says here it's about ensuring every child, no matter what their individual needs or barriers to learning are, have equal access to learning and the same opportunities to achieve. So it's all about giving equal access. And ironically, or in a as a like a paradox, for students to be equal, you have to acknowledge that they are not equal. Does that make sense a bit? So it's acknowledging that some students may have some disadvantages, may need a little more help than others. And by giving them the tools that they need, the support that they need, we can give all students a level playing field. It's also about creating a learning environment that works for all pupils, whether they have a disability, whether they speak English only as an additional language, meaning hindi siya yung mother tongue nila, or they might be a member of a minority community, or they come from a low-income family. Or in general, maybe they just find it harder to learn and achieve for other reasons. So maybe they have a learning disability. So all of these factors are things that need to be considered when we talk about inclusion. And on this next slide, I know it's a lot of text. These are just 12 inclusive classroom strategies from that same article I saw. But I just want to highlight 3. So number 4 says creating opportunities to listen to all students. I like this because inclusivity also means letting all voices be heard. So, in every classroom, there are always students who are very game to recite, but it's easy to just call on them all the time because they're raising their hands. But it's great. A way to be inclusive is to also call on those who might not be reciting, but actually have the answers already in their minds. Another one, number 6, is to be aware of the specific needs of every child in your class. So a simple example of this is, I don't know about if it still happens now, especially with remote learning, but at the start of every school year, our teachers would ask us who here are left-handed, and then right away the teacher will take note and make sure that these students are provided left-handed seats. So I know that not all schools may have that privilege, may not have those resources, but that's one example of just knowing what are the specific needs of some of the students in the classroom, and what can we provide to make it comfortable for everyone. And number 12 is don't compare the progress of one child to another. Personal progress is key. So I think this is a really great strategy, because as much as we might want to have our students be competitive, students learn at different paces. And rather than making them compete with each other, it's great to let students see the progress they've made versus maybe their past submissions. So now let me connect this all to Canva. So I'll be focusing on how graphics can play a large role in how inclusive we are as, let's say, teachers or educators. So the main thing I want to talk about today is being purposeful with the imagery that you use. When I say purposeful, it means let's have intent. Sadyahin natin yung mga photos, illustrations that we put in our slides, because these have a great impact on young learners. So here I've put several photos of Filipino art, Filipino culture, Filipino people, with the keywords underneath that you would search on Canva to find these photos. So for context, Canva actually has over 500 Filipino employees, a lot of whom are designers, and we also contract a lot of photographers, contributors, to add to our library. And a lot of those are Filipino photos, Filipino content, because we want to represent our audiences and be as diverse as possible. So whether it's showing, let's say our grandparents, Filipino grandparents, showing Filipino families, or showing Filipino native art like pottery, you can find these photos on Canva just by searching how you would on any, like even on Google. Just type in the search words. Speaking of Pinoy, so as much as possible in our presentations, we want to show relatable Pinoy characters and culture as much as we can. Because the tendency is when we grab photos from other places, they're usually stock images of, let's say, Caucasian people, Americans, people who don't really look like us, and this can create dysphoria for students because they don't see themselves in the photos that we show. So with Canva, it's now very accessible to find Filipino photos, Filipino, what's it, make powder, yung mga things that are very relatable for them. And we can integrate these in our lessons. Speaking of, it's March and it's Women's Month. So another way that we can be inclusive with our imagery is when we talk about women. When we show women, talk about women, especially for young girls, let's try to break the stereotypes. So we can show women in this field of science. We can show women in the field of construction and heavy machinery. And we can also show women of all shapes and sizes, of all ages and hair colors and hair textures. So we have the power as educators to mold young girls on how they see themselves. So rather than showing them archetypes like the woman in the kitchen or the woman doting to their husband only, we can actually empower little girls that they can get the same careers as other just like men. Honestly, that's the point, that men and women are equal, and from when they're girls pa lang, we can already instill that in them. Speaking of women, we also have lots of Pinay, Filipino women elements and photos that you can also explore and turn into classroom activities. The one in the middle is a very cute one. If you remember yung mga paper dolls as kids. So may mga ganun din on Canva where students can move around different parts of the, let's say, Flores de Mayo costume and decorate their Filipino woman as they please. And on the right, we have also photos of natural Filipino women embracing their morena skin. So again, we have the power to shape women, to shape girls, to see the beauty that they have. So if we can show them women who look like them, if we can show them women with skin color that matches how they see themselves, it can really help in building their self-esteem. We should also normalize LGBTQIA+ by showing the entire spectrum. So I myself am a member of the LGBTQIA+. So as a gay person, it's very important for me that we're represented not just as one type of character and not as something that's taboo. So if we can show gay characters in our everyday visuals, if we can show two dads with a child, we can show two moms with a child, or we can show non-binary, genderqueer people without stigmatizing them, then that's great for all of these young kids who might not really understand yet what they're going through. Another one is representing all people of all abilities. So if we can show videos of, let's say, special children, people on the autism spectrum, and show that they're no different from other children. And even here, we have very, very cute elements, illustrations of children with disabilities who may need a dog for vision. So showing these and normalizing these types of images can do wonders for young learners. One last is to also be inclusive when it comes to religion, when it comes to beliefs, by acknowledging that not everyone has the same beliefs. So we can, and I think this is a pitfall for many of us because the majority of the Philippines is Catholic, but it still isn't everyone who's Catholic. So um, we can show women in their hijab, we can show Islam elements, the temples of Buddhism, and also the temples or places of worship for Judaism. So it's important that we acknowledge that not everyone has the same beliefs. Another simple way is if you're talking to, let's say, international students, instead of saying Merry Christmas, you can say Happy Holidays instead, because not everyone actually celebrates Christmas. Okay. I also want to I also want to talk about another feature that we have. It's called the character builder feature. So this is new, and this allows anyone to create a character of different skin tones, different hairstyles, and this is a great way to represent students. Features, I have a very exciting new feature that I want to share with you. So it's called Character Builder, and all you need to do is scroll down to the bottom here and click More, and then click here Character Builder. So it says here, choose from a variety of different faces, bodies, and expressions to create your own unique character to embed into your own design. So let's click here, Use. And you'll see now you have different options to create and build your own character. So let's say we can pick this head. You could also make it a girl, make her blonde, and then you could also change the face, so different facial expressions. So let's say you're asking your students how they feel today, and to build a character that describes it. And then you can also change the body, can change the outfit, can also change the posture if the student is sitting down, kneeling, or in a wheelchair. We've really tried to encompass all types of students here. And then you can change the skin tone. We have some prescribed colors here, but you can actually choose any color you want. You could even make her yellow, like the Simpsons. And then also the hair color, we have different hair colors that you can choose. Or again, pick any color that you want. So when the student is done, they will click here, Done. And now they have a character of themselves that they can move around and resize and add to their designs. So go ahead and try this today, and maybe you can make it part of your next classroom activity. Thank you. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that little demo. So this is a new feature, and I think it will do wonders for students who will also try it, because now they are not limited by the illustrations that are out there. They can create their own character that they feel looks like themselves. It's like they're creating an avatar, like when they're playing a video game and they're picking the different components. And one great output that I've seen in the Canva for Pinoy Teachers community is this comic strip or storybook that teacher Arlene made using that character builder feature. So she designed this character who is in this child in a wheelchair, and it was a great story all about this little girl asking her mom, why am I different? Why am I different from my classmates? Why am I in a wheelchair? So it's a very heartwarming story, and it's someone from Canva. I'm very happy to see that we've made it easy for someone like Teacher Arlene to tell this story. Okay, so I'm at the tail end of my presentation, and I just want to invite everyone, all of the K-12 teachers here. If you haven't yet, you can avail of Canva for Education, so that all of the features I talked about earlier, you can use for free. So you just need to go to canva.com/education. If you have an edu email, that would be great. you will get approved almost instantly. And if you don't, that's fine. You can use your Gmail or Yahoo, and it might just take a little longer. But when you do this, it allows you access to pretty much everything that Canva has to offer. Even our paid content becomes free for our educators. So you gain access to millions of premium images, illustrations, and videos for your class. Okay. So this was just a short presentation. So kung nabitin kayo, I would love to invite you to join our community. So it is called Canva for Pinoy Teachers. Just search it on Facebook, or here's the link. You'll see it right away. And right now we have 67,000 members. So it's a very, very fun, interactive community. You yourself can share your designs there, or you can be an observer and just watch everyone else share their designs and get inspired. And I just want to say thank you again for listening to this presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. And if by any chance you want a copy of the presentation, since we're being inclusive here, we will make it accessible. So just scan the QR code, or go to canva.me/inclusivity and Canva to get a copy of this presentation. So that concludes my portion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chris. Thank you very much, Chris De Vera. That was indeed very insightful. And I am a big fan of Canva. So seeing this initiative that you are doing is just amazing. So to our students out there, this is now your chance to ask our speaker about any questions that you have. I think I'm just hearing a little bit of feedback, I think. Is it? Yeah. Maybe there. Okay. So yes, you still have a chance to ask Chris our question. Just send in your questions, and at the same time use our hashtag safe spaces for all faces for your key takeaway. Okay, Chris. So this is my question for you. What can we do as individuals to show our support towards students in online learning who are in poverty situations?
Okay. That's a great question, and I think a very big reality for a lot of teachers now. So I would say we, as individuals, we need to practice maximum compassion, maximum tolerance. So let's say I'm the teacher. As much as we want everyone to have their cameras on, or to be in a non-distracting space, we shouldn't scold students if they cannot turn on their cameras, if they don't have a camera, or if they are ashamed to show, let's say, their room, their house. Because I can only imagine the insecurity students would have if they can see, let's say, a rich classmate, and then they know that their background might not be as beautiful as their classmates. We also should not scold students if, when they're reciting, naririnig yung manok or the tricycle passing by. So it's being as compassionate and understanding of different student situations, not making them feel bad about it. And from a technological standpoint, it's also adjusting. I know many teachers are also printing out their lesson plans, creating modules, and then maybe the parents will pick it up, or they'll deliver it straight to the student's home. It's a very, it's a big hassle for teachers, but that is one way to make sure that no student gets left behind.
That is a brilliant answer. Thank you very much, Chris De Vera, and to all who participated in our Q&A. Thank you, Chris. Now it is time to move on to our final topic of the first day of the Safe Spaces Summit. And our last topic is Together for Safe Spaces for All Faces, Braving the Way for Diversity. This tackles the key role of diversity in creating safe spaces, because we know that every culture, every nationality, every single person sees the world in a different way. Similarly, every culture, nationality, and person has different knowledge, perspectives, and points of view. So when all of these different views are shared together, miracles can happen. So, to help us be more receptive to diversity and differences, we have the co founder and president of CRIS, a nonprofit organization that utilizes education as a pathway to peace here in the Philippines. So Chris has built libraries and provided scholarships for young people victimized by conflict and poverty. Today, Chris educates, empowers, and inspires young peace builders through summits, training programs, and offline and online information campaigns. We have with us Ariza. She is one of the 10 young leaders handpicked by the former United Nations Secretary General Kofi Annan to eradicate violent extremism through the Extremely Together initiative. Help me in welcoming Miss Ariza Noku.
So much. Thank you so much for that kind introduction, Mika. So just give me a minute to share my PowerPoint presentation. I've been very happy to, hold on, give me a minute. I've been very happy to listen actually from the other speakers. So I think what I'm going to do is really just sort of crystallize what everybody has been talking about and leave you with possibly questions or things to think about at the end of my presentation. So give me a minute to just download the presentation. Okay, so it's taking a while, but please bear with me. I am very excited to show you some pictures about my story and my journey as somebody who has been living with diversity from the very first day of her life, and you'll find out more about it later. Almost there. Okay, I'm just about to select my presentation. All right. Thank you so much for your patience. And thank you so much for the Global Peace Foundation for inviting me for this Safe Spaces Summit, which is honestly something that we really need in the world today. I think that today there is a lot of conflict. There is a lot of war. There is a lot of tension between people of different cultures and different religions and different backgrounds. And there is a lot of polarization, especially when we open our screens, when we log on Facebook, even as we're preparing 1 month to go for the national elections. Things have been very and feeling unsafe and sort of polarized and challenging. So how do we navigate through all that? So with this presentation, what I want to do is to just walk you through my life, my journey as somebody working in diversity and working towards peace. So this is entitled Growing Up in Two Worlds. I grew up seeing conflict and terrorism happen in my community. I come from a very special place in the Philippines. One of my hometowns is Zamboanga City, which was mentioned earlier, was actually victimized by a siege, which happened several years ago and that displaced hundreds of thousands of people. Another hometown of mine is the beautiful province of Sulu, which has amazing white sand beaches and crystal clear water. But unfortunately, this island has also been the victim of many terrorist attacks and has been considered the hotspot of terrorism in southern Mindanao, especially by the group allied with ISIS called Abu Sayyaf. So these really beautiful and amazing places that I love and that where my family and my friends reside have really been challenged by conflict and terrorism. And this is what I grew up with. And if you look at the statistics, actually, the Philippines is 10th in the number of countries most affected by terrorism worldwide. So this is from the Global Terrorism Index of 2020. Also, if you look at the number of terror attacks or incidents happening, there is one happening nearly every day in the Philippines. And some of you might think, oh, maybe this is just happening in Mindanao or certain parts of the southern part of our country. But no, it's actually happening everywhere. Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. So it's a big concern. And one reason for this conflict, although there are many reasons, and it's actually a complicated web of interconnected factors, one reason for this conflict is the lack of cohesion across people of different religions and cultures and backgrounds. So we're so different in many ways, and sometimes that creates tension and that creates even war. But my family offered a different perspective. So I told you earlier that from day one of my life, I grew up with diversity because my dad, the person you see on the left, is actually a Christian who comes from a very religious family residing in Zamboanga. Meanwhile, my mom, she's Muslim and she comes also from a very religious family residing in Sulu. So when they met, there was instant attraction, as they said. Sana all, diba? But they knew that there were so many things that prevented them from being together because they had different religions and they both came from families that they knew would be very upset with them if they decided to get together with these two religions. But in the end, love prevailed and we ended up creating a family together. And the interesting thing about my parents is that they actually kept their religion. So we didn't convert to one religion. They decided to stay, my dad as Catholic and my mom as Muslim. And that made for an interesting childhood because I always felt myself in the middle of two worlds, in the middle of Islam and Christianity. I literally grew up learning about two religions. My dad would teach me lessons and verses from the Bible. My mom would teach me what she learned, values and verses from the Quran. My relatives would instruct me the prayers and the traditions with each religion. And I would follow two different sets of practices sometimes. So we would go to mass with my dad, but I would also not eat pork out of respect for my mom. So it was really a mix of two different religions. But in the end, what I realized was that these two religions had more in common. They both talked about peace. They both taught about love. They both showed generosity, compassion, and charity. And really, I came out not really feeling a difference between the two, but sort of feeling like they were very, very similar to each other. And this home, that was my first safe space because my parents had the audacity, the courage to say, okay, we're not going to convert. We're going to keep both Islam and Christianity in this household, no matter what anyone says. And you two, as our kids, will have to do the same. So you'll have to respect both religions. And despite what you see around you, despite the conflict that is happening around you, it's okay. This is neutral ground. This is our harmonious household. This is our safe home. And that's a feeling that I've always wanted to replicate. Because when I saw what was happening around me, outside my home, the conflict, the terrorism, the very extremism and violence that was happening in our hometowns, I really wanted to recreate that safe space for everyone. And the only problem was that I didn't know how. How can you create safe spaces like that for everybody? So I knew that peace was possible because I saw it in my home. But how do we create it outside or how do we spread it outside? So for me, the answer came when I started going to school. I've been very, very privileged to receive scholarships to two top institutions in the Philippines. So I attended high school as a full scholar at the Philippine Science High School. And then I also attended university as a full scholar at the University of the Philippines. And this rare privilege is something I really treasured because I know that it's a privilege that very few Filipinos have. Especially, we're talking about the this distance learning, the problems we have with it. So many students still don't have access to the things that they need to have a good quality education, and even schools, teachers, and academic institutions not having enough resources to give the students what they need. So as we're talking about these things, I end up feeling honestly really privileged because of the education I had. And I think even as a high school kid, so this was me in high school, I was always thinking, how can I also share this education to others? Knowing how important education was and how life-changing education has been for me, is that the way we could actually share peace with other people through education? And my question was answered when I read this quote by Maria Montessori that said, establishing lasting peace is the work of education. All politics can do is keep us out of war. And that became the seed that launched our nonprofit organization called Chris for Peace. So Chris actually started because of an acronym or a shortened word which we fashioned out of Cristiano Islam Peace Library. So Chris, we started in 2008 by building these peace libraries, providing scholarships, and donating books and school supplies to young people affected by conflict and poverty in the country. So we really wanted to use education as a way to promote peace, first, by providing young people with educational resources so that it would open their minds to other stories concerning other cultures, other religions, other backgrounds. And as we're opening their minds, we're hopefully making them more empathetic. We're making them identify more with people of other backgrounds. And we're making them more vulnerable to getting touched by people who are not like them. So this was one.
I think we're encountering a few technical difficulties on the side of Ariza. Ariza, can you hear us? Let's just wait a bit for her to reconnect. But at this point, I would like to remind our viewers to please drop those tweets. Remember, you still have a chance to win 1,000 pesos via GCash. 6 of you. We have 6 winners that can still win. A while ago, we already announced the 4. So please, I would want to remind you, please continue tweeting your key takeaways because you still have a chance of winning. And while we wait for Ariza, maybe do we have let's ask the tech team if we do have the winners ready. Let us wait if they do have the winners ready. But tomorrow we want to remind you to come and join us because we will be announcing the Safe Spaces campaign short film competition winners. Okay, so Ariza, are you back?
Yes, I'm back. I'm very sorry about that.
No
Let
problem.
me
You can
load my presentation again.
Yes, again. You can resume at where you had been cut.
All right. Okay. Apologies for that.
No problem.
Okay. So thank you for your patience. Let's proceed. So actually, I just wanted to show you some of the things that we did as part of this organization. And we're very grateful because throughout the years, we've been able to impact the lives of thousands of young people in these communities that are affected by conflict and poverty. So this is a mobile library that we did in Sulu. This is a picture of one of the activities we had in our libraries before. And this is a picture of the scholars that we were able to help, hundreds of scholars actually from preschool to college that we helped in completing their education. And this is another picture of an activity called World Hijab Day, which we celebrate every February 1st. So in this activity, we actually brought Muslim women and non-Muslim women to come together just to learn about the hijab and what it means for Muslim women. And this is an exhibit that we created with the Austrian Embassy in Manila. And we actually set this up as a gallery of photos representing unity and diversity received from photographers all over the world. And we set this up in Intramuros, which is one of the most tourist-heavy destinations in Metro Manila. And it was a great experience. And because of these activities, we've also been able to partner with global partners who have been very generous in giving us more chances to connect with young people on promoting peace. So we work with Extremely Together, which is an initiative by the Kofi Annan Foundation based in Geneva, which works to unite young people on countering violent extremism and promoting peace. So this is actually something that we have been launching in the Philippines for the past 2 years. So Extremely Together Philippines has recently been organizing digital events. We've been training young peace builders in places such as Zamboanga City, Marawi City, Tagum City, and more. And we've also been working with other chapters of Extremely Together in the world, such as Pakistan, Uganda, and Somalia. And I have been invested in working towards promoting unity and diversity and promoting peace for really most of my life. And throughout this very long journey, our work at Chris at Extremely Together continues to be centered upon the same story. And that story is one of creating safe spaces, not just for ourselves, but for those around us. This girl on the left, you may think she's very different from the girl on the right, but they're almost exactly the same. They may dress differently, they may have different religious beliefs, but they both want a good life for themselves and for their families. They both want to maximize their potential. They both have hearts that could reach out to others, and they both really want to work together to have a life that is good for everyone and not just themselves. So I want to leave you with some questions and maybe some things to think about later on. So the first is that diversity is an asset, not a liability. I know that when we have a more diverse society, we can gain more knowledge, more skills, and more traits that we can utilize towards the better good. So it's a great tool. But as with all tools, it could also be used not for good. So you can use diversity for evil, for hatred, for violence. But if we use it well, I think it can be very powerful in making us richer, more developed, and more progressive as a country and as a world. Second point for reflection, and this is very, very important. In order to create safe spaces, we have to redefine what safe spaces are. A safe space, I think, is not necessarily your comfort zone. We may need to be uncomfortable to create safety. So this one, it may sound a little bit ironic, but let me explain. Sometimes we think of safe spaces as areas where we feel absolutely comfortable, absolutely at peace, and absolutely, chill with everything. But the truth is that sometimes safe spaces can't be like that, because there will be situations where we meet people who aren't necessarily comfortable with what we're saying, and we're not comfortable with what they're saying. They may say things that can, sometimes incite us a little bit and make us a bit annoyed or pissed. Or they may just be people that we've had long prejudices or judgments or biases against. But we still need to create that safe space. And to create that safe space, we have to be uncomfortable sometimes. We have to leave space for conflict, a little bit of productive conflict. We have to leave space for negative emotions too, because without processing those emotions, we can't ever get to the point where that safe is absolutely comfortable for everybody. So please remember this and don't shy away from creating possible safe spaces, even though they don't feel that safe at the beginning. Third, to create true safety, we need empathy and compassion. I think we talk a lot these days. We post, we tweet, we put all of our voices out there because we know our voice is important. But I think if we want to create safe spaces, we have to shut up and we have to talk, to listen more than we talk. So I hope you take that in mind as you're conversing, especially with people online, because there's so much to be gained just from reading what others think, just from trying to see why they feel the way they feel, and from trying to understand who they really are. Listen. And last but not least, there can be no safe space without a common purpose. I really believe that we as a human society. We're so different in so many ways, and that's why we've all been fighting so much. But when we concentrate on a common purpose, when we concentrate towards the same goals, we can really create more safe spaces that have purpose. And there are so many goals to choose from: ending the pandemic, creating more just and democratic societies, addressing the problem of climate change, addressing the mental health crisis, addressing the education crisis. There's so many problems to choose from. And I hope that when you think of a safe space, it's not just a safe space because it's a safe space, but it's a safe space that exists for a purpose. Thank you so much, everyone. Apologies for the technical issue earlier, but thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Riza, for really, that was quite impactful. And I'm sure a lot of our young people here can relate to your story. But here's a question for you. How would you advocate for diversity to people who are unaware of its significance?
Okay, thank you for that question. I'm really a big fan of showing people stories rather than telling them just facts or statistics or numbers. So I would say sharing stories that show how diversity has helped a community or a family or a workplace or a school, and make it as relatable as possible. So let me give an example. If you're trying to convince, say, your workplace that diversity is a good thing and not a bad thing. And that's actually a very important thing to do these days, because workplaces have become very diverse and we have generations clashing with each other. We have people from different religions or backgrounds. We have immigration, making people of different races and ethnicities and skin colors working together in one place. So if we want to do that, then I would share stories of other workplaces benefiting from diversity, like so and so company made more women executives, or put people from different ethnicities into positions of power, and it created X value to them, whether it was economic or whether it was some innovation that they were able to create because of that unique traits that the new people brought in. So there, I guess, stories that really tug at the emotions of people.
Thank you, Ariza. Very well said, and we wish you all the best with your advocacy.
Thank you.
At this point, we want to thank all our speakers who joined us today, and also, of course, our viewers. But to our speakers, you've inspired our students, young leaders, and participants of this Safe Spaces Summit in the Philippines to be aware of their critical role in advancing safe spaces in schools, communities, and conversations, both online and offline. But before we announce the 5 winners of 1,000 pesos GCash, well, sorry, let me correct myself, 6 winners of 1,000 pesos GCash, I'd like to remind everyone that tomorrow we will have another set of exciting youth speakers that will discuss topics that you will find very, very relevant. And of course, the announcement of the 5 winning entries of the Safe Spaces campaign short film, who will win 50,000 pesos each. So we hope that you can join us again tomorrow at 1 o'clock. But for now, here are the 5 winners. Well, 6 winners of 1,000 pesos GCash. Beginning with congratulations to Ads Crisostomo. Emphatic listening is vital in maintaining safe spaces for conversations. One should learn when it is the right time to speak and when it is the right time to listen. Congratulations also to Lance Garcia. Our freedom of speech does not justify careless expression of thought and ideas. To communicate better, one must bear the responsibility of listening well. Listening is not an easy task, but it is definitely the best gift one can grant. Next, we have Sir Lubert. A child should get and enjoy the benefits of their basic rights as human, thereby fulfilling their dreams through maximizing their full potential and not being entered into early marriage. Also, congratulations to Alan, that's double L and NNN, the triple NMB. Alan MB_. Poverty is really a big factor why our country has massive number of child marriage. Because of this, it will become a domino effect where the most destruction can be found in the child itself. Second to the last, we have Alite PTP. That's ALIT PTP, or it's Alite PTP. Canva is one of the best tools that can help students in designing lots of stuff. We can navigate it easily using different devices and it can run smoothly. Completing that list of winners, we have TSJRSPRDNCRML. Once again, that's TSJRPRDNCRML. Diversity is good, but inclusivity should be the goal. We cannot move forward if we do not involve victims of conflict in shaping our political and social landscape. Very well said. Congratulations to our 6 winners. You all win 1,000 pesos GCash that you could use to load your phones for your online classes. So thank you for joining, and congratulations for winning. But how are you able to get in touch with us? To all the winners, send us an email at gpyph@globalpeace.org. Once again, that's gpyph@globalpeace.org to claim your prizes. Thank you and congratulations to all the winners. Do not forget to send us that email at gpyph@globalpeace.org. Thank you also, of course, to the Global Peace Foundation, Consuelo, Zobel, Alger Foundation, Department of Education, International Cooperation Office, Unilever, and ABSCBN News Channel for this year's Safe Spaces Summit. It has been a full day packed with amazing insights from all our key opinion leaders. I am so excited for tomorrow. Safe schools, safe communities, safe conversations, student leaders, young professionals, and the youth. You play a big role in making things happen. I am your host, Mika Pineda, and I will see you again tomorrow at 1 o'clock.
Thank you for joining the second Safe Spaces Summit. See you again tomorrow.